Before we even get started, yes, my hair is pink and green now. Let's just get it out of the way. It's done. We don't have to talk about it anymore. Quarantine got to me, okay? I was out of things to do. I was high as fuck off an edible, and I was like, what if my hair was both pink and green? And now I have the head of a watermelon, so. Hey, howdy. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Avery Jam, and today I'm here to tell you about some of my hometown murders. If you don't know what the show My Favorite Murder is, then go back to my May TBR and watch that video where I explain it. But basically it's a podcast, and on the podcast, since the beginning of it, they have been doing hometown murders you remember from your hometown when you were a kid, and like cases that got you into true crime. About a year ago, I made a post on my blog called Avery's Favorite Murder, which is just hometown stories that I remember, and I'm gonna go over those stories with you today. So get your snacks, get your popcorn, and get ready to hear about some death. I feel like I don't need a warning at this point, but warning, I'm gonna talk about dead people. Let's get into it. My hometown is Billings, Montana. I live in Colorado Springs now, but I was born and raised in the exact same house in Billings for 20 years of my life. And so all of my stories take place in or around Billings. It's a smaller town. For Montana, it's pretty big, but there's not a lot of people. Everyone kind of knows everyone, sort of city, really cold in the winter, definitely colder than Colorado. Everybody always asks me that. They're like, oh, why would you move from Montana to Colorado? Colorado is way nicer. The weather here is so much nicer. Anyway, the first story that I have takes place in the summer of 2013. I was just about to go into high school, I believe. And at that time in my life, I was hanging out with a lot of the kids in the neighborhood still, so we had all grown up, within a few blocks of each other, and we would always ride our bikes around and just kind of goof off, do whatever neighborhood kid gang things. And I remember this summer in specific, my mom saying, like, you need to be home before dark, like, be careful when you're out and about. If you see any strange men, like, make sure you head home immediately. I didn't really know why. I knew that there was some person going around, but I didn't really look into the details at the time or what was actually going on. Turns out what was going on was that there was a serial rapist. He worked for some kind of construction or home renovation company, and he was stalking the women that were his customers. He was stalking them, scouting out their house for a few days, and then he would break into their house and rape them and leave, which is terrifying. His name was Toby Griego. He raped 3 women and attempted to rape a 4th, which explains why everyone was so freaked out about it at the time. That's a lot for Montana. There's not very many serial cases of anything. Usually it's like if someone's murdered or raped, it's a one-off thing, and hopefully usually they catch them. There's not a lot of serial predators. He was really good at covering up evidence, so it took them a while to catch him. And when they did catch him, he was found guilty and sentenced to 22 consecutive life sentences, which is a lot for home invasion and rape. Usually you can get off with not a life sentence on rape. I mean, obviously serial rape is a little different. Hopefully people are getting life sentences for that, but 22 consecutive life sentences is quite a bit, so good job, Montana, on that one. And he did appeal for a retrial, saying that his trial was unfair or something, but the Supreme Court voted 5-0. They were like, nah, you're staying in prison, so he's still in prison to this day. Good job, Montana, on that one. At least that one had a resolved ending. Story number 2. In late 2017, this was the year after I graduated high school, so I was 19. I graduated in 2016. And they found a decapitated body, and it was rolled in a carpet and found on a dirt trail on the west end of Billings. That's where the body was found, and his head was found wrapped in a towel a few feet away. The body belonged to a man who he was like a gambler. He hung out at the casino a lot, and he won some money at a casino, and he like went up to the lady that was working and said, "Hey, if something happens to me, make sure you tell them that those two people over there are responsible." And they were just a couple of like transient homeless people, something like that, I believe. And I guess they went back to their camp where they were staying, and these two guys ended up murdering him. Their names were Donald Cherry and Jeffrey Haverty, and they murdered him and then decapitated him. And they both claimed to have done it for money, which is ironic because in the end, he only had $6 on him. So, it's rough. I guess how they found out that they did it was Cherry's girlfriend, she came to the police and confessed, saying that she had come back and seen him decapitating the body. So, talk about a sight to come home to. Imagine your boyfriend's just fucking chopping somebody's head off in the front of your camp, and you're like, come on, man. I thought we talked about this. I thought we weren't murdering people anymore. The next story that I have is about a teacher that went missing in Sidney, Montana, and I want to read what I said first in this blog post because it says, "Back when I was in middle school, we would always talk about current events in our history class, and I remember, as a class, following the case of a missing teacher from Sidney, Montana. Looking back, it seems maybe they shouldn't be discussing missing person cases with 12-year-olds, and that this probably has nothing to do with my constant fear of being murdered." Anyway, they eventually found the body of Sherry Arnold, who was a math teacher in Sidney, Montana. They found her body in North Dakota in a shallow grave. The two guys that were responsible were named Lester Van Waters and Michael Spell, who were apparently looking for work in the oil fields, also on a lot of drugs, and it was completely random. They strangled her and then purchased a shovel at Walmart to bury her with, which they returned to Walmart shortly afterwards. Murder 101, people. Don't return the thing you used to bury a body. What the fuck? That's how you know you're on cocaine. Ah, fuck. Yeah, that's rough. The next one I have is one that my dad told me about that happened in 2000. So I was young. I was born in 1998, so I was like 2 years old. I don't remember this at all. But my dad remembers it, and it was an unsolved murder of a woman that was found in a burning car. The coroner said that she died of smoke inhalation, so she was alive when she was put in the car, which is horrible. They had to identify her by her dental records because that was the only thing that was left. She had 3 children that lived in Washington, and then an ex-husband that also lived in Washington, who was extensively questioned, and they did not come up with anything. But they realized that there was footage on a gas station nearby where the car and her body was found, where a man had purchased $1 of gas and some matches. They had the man on security footage, but they could never identify him, and the case is still considered unsolved to this very day. The last story I have to tell you is one that happened to me personally. No, I was not murdered. Surprise, surprise. This one ends out okay, you guys. But when I was 16, I had a bedroom that was on the ground level, and you could see into the window from the street, but there was a tree blocking it. And so I never really thought very much about people being able to look into my window or anything like that. I had a shade, but it was kind of a sheer material, so if you were looking really closely, you could see through it. And also, I had a window fan in my window where you could look, if you got really close to the window fan, you could also see through it. It was always hot in my house in the summer, so I always had my shades open so the air could blow in at night. And my dad would always say, like, aren't you worried somebody's gonna look at you through the window? And I was always like, that's not gonna happen. We live in Billings, Montana. Everything's fine. And so I never really thought otherwise until one night I was sitting in my bed reading, and a man said to me through the slats of my window fan, "Touch yourself, little girl," and I threw the blanket over my head. And then I realized this is not a good method of survival I need to go tell somebody that this man is outside of the house. And so I used all of my courage in my little, tiny, scared heart, and I ran out of my room and upstairs, yelled at my parents, there's someone outside my window, there's someone outside my window. My dad went outside, he brought, like, some kind of weapon with him, just in case, and there was nobody outside my window anymore, but he did see the door across the street shut and a light turn on upstairs. And he's lived over there my whole life, so it is very possible that he could have been watching me for a good chunk of my life, which I don't like to think too much about. I mean, I live in Colorado now, so it's like, whatever, I'm very far away from him. Other weird connections I have to murder, I dated the nephew, I believe, of Richard Speck. And at the time, I think he was like, hey, did you know I'm related to a serial killer? And I was like, oh yeah, whatever. And then years later, I realized who he was related to, and I was like, oh, fuck. Damn, I wish I would have asked more questions about that. But I knew, like, his mom and stuff, too. They were all really great people. Me and his mom worked together at JCPenney, which just goes to show how small Billings is. There you go. Those are my stories of murder and deviance in Billings, Montana when I was growing up. If you want to hear more, I can definitely come up with more. I've had a lot of weird run-ins in my life with a lot of weird things. So make sure you like and comment and subscribe and all of that great stuff if you want to see more. And if you don't want to see more, then why are you watching the channel? That's it. That's all I got for you. Bye.